Hello, this is Alec DeLeon. I'm here with 15.3 Southern News. I'm here with Mr. Daniel Lee, running for State Representative of District 26. Good afternoon, Mr. Lee.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I know right now early voting has started from be running until the 25th. With the redistricting that's occurred recently, what should Texans be aware about as they go out to the polls and for the election that's coming up on March 1st?
So redistricting basically means that your lines are redrawn. So for example, I'm in District 26, right? I used to be in District 28. So why does any of that matter and what is it about, right? So the Republicans are currently in power. They own the majority of the seats in the House and the Senate, as well as, they have someone named Greg Abbott, that's the governor, if you didn't know. And so when they're voting, they already have the majority. And so the purpose of redistricting, the actual purpose, not what happened recently, but the actual purpose was so that all the lines are drawn to meet and to equalize what is the population, right? And so, you want to get a fair amount of, the population so that everybody's represented properly, right? The problem is that when you look at how these districts are redrawn, for example, ours, you're eliminating certain types of minorities so that you can still get a leg up on your opponent. So, for example, if you look at our numbers, they increase by approximately, I think, 5%. So the number of African Americans and Asians decreased, and the number of Republican voters increased by an extra 5%. So essentially, the incumbent that's in my district, this is just an example because every district's a little bit different. The person that's the incumbent in my district was part of the committee that redrew all the districts. And when he did that, he won by a small margin, and now, statistically, now that he has to run every 2 years, he will have a larger margin of victory because now he has an extra 5%, right? Mm-hmm. And so many times people say they're not using these things to game the system, but data is data, right? And if you can't explain why, then the assumption is that you're using it so that you can maintain your power, right? And so a lot of voters are coming out because they're upset that this is going on, and nobody likes bullies and nobody likes unfair situations. Most people, they always go for the underdog, and they don't like being mistreated and misrepresented.
That makes sense. And the demographics that you directly referred to in African Americans and Asians is who he's directly running against in yourself and Mr. Allen.
That's correct.
So that has a direct relation there. I've seen in some of the past interviews that you've done, your main focus in terms of education was teacher pay and attempting to stimulate teacher pay and increase teacher pay. What efforts do you think can be made in order to start attaining some of those goals and just benefiting education here in Houston?
Well, when you look at government spending, there's some projects that are out there that we could redirect. So what we need to do is comb through some of these other projects that aren't necessary and send them over to a big project that is necessary, which is teacher shortage, right? So that's one thing we need to do, is basically do a general audit of where we're spending our money. And that's the easy answer, right? The best answer is trying to combine something else and then redirect it over, to teacher pay, right? Mm-hmm. Creating something entirely new, mm-hmm. right? And so I believe teachers in general have paid their own dues, right? Mm-hmm. They put their time in, they're underpaid, and, at least to our society, they've given up something, and they've given up a lot, mm-hmm. Whether it's their time, mm-hmm. or the fact that they're underpaid and the fact that they have to deal with, very stringent type of curriculum and dealing with difficult parents and children, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we need is that we have big, large companies, right, that can, and they can afford, and they've been making so much money that they need to pay their part too, right? Mm-hmm. And so they need to help contribute somehow to our society. And so, they've been benefiting this whole time by either having cuts, like tax cuts, or certain types of benefits that they've been able to take advantage of, right? Now, I'm not saying necessarily taking advantage of us, but they have the ability because they've already benefited from us as a whole, right? And so we need to throw that back. So whether it's getting it from, we want to create new energy, right? Without getting rid of, old stuff, because we can't do that. We're too reliant. We have a lot of jobs in those sectors, the oil and gas sectors. We can't get rid of that because otherwise our entire economy here, at least in Houston, would collapse. And so what we need to do is add, right? So we can add wind, we can add nuclear, we can add certain other things. And through those different projects, we can figure out ways to fund and create more money so that teachers can get paid more.
With your relation in law, you have so many years in law, and all of your reviews, all of your customers and clients and speak so glowingly of you. How do you still maintain the time and the energy for seemingly small issues like a traffic violation to these larger issues, whether it comes to energy or education or infrastructure? How do you still manage all of these independent kind of expectations as an individual, and how do you think you're going to manage that going into as a representative of Texas?
So the long story short is that I don't do traffic tickets, first of all. I know how to do them, but my main practice is not traffic tickets.
Yeah, everyone spoke so glowingly of you. Every review you have was very well. It's like he really cared about me.
Yeah, I mean, we, generally speaking, at least in my experience, I don't get good reviews on traffic tickets only because it seems kind of minor in their eyes. But, the cases that we do handle, essentially I have staff that, they can help me out when necessary. And I think the courts are very accommodating as far as pushing out deadlines if necessary. And so I think after speaking with some current representatives, the schedule is fairly manageable because I do have staff, and this is my second time running, so I've already adjusted previously, so I kind of saw what it looked like, in preparation the first time, and then now this time I'm definitely more prepared because I kind of planned it out 2 years ago.
So you learned a lot from the first time that you went through this process, kind of felt that out, and now your second time going into it. Is there anything you're doing differently now that you didn't do the first time in terms of your campaign itself? Because it seems like you're the underdog financially speaking, just in terms of contributions that are available. Your expenditures exceed those of your opponents as well. It seems like you're really marketing to these demographics that especially the demographic of District 26 and all those around it. What is your main focus in terms of trying to get to these demographics and trying to really speak to them so that way they show out to the voting?
Well, the one thing that's a little bit different is the last time I ran a county-wide race, which geographically was taxing. And the entire Fort Bend is huge, right? And I would say there's probably 4 times as many voters that I had to reach out to compared to now. So I'll say that, and the difference is that my opponents, I believe, have started a little bit earlier than I have. Maybe they've had 2 or 3 times as much, time, especially Mr. Allen. I believe he was already, running in 26 the last time when he lost. And so now that he redistricted into 26, you can possibly assume that he might be able to recycle some of those same, pamphlets and things like that to save some money, right? But I'm not too concerned because, we work really hard as a team. We're battle tested. We've done this before, and I know other people have, too. I think the difference is that we employ and our volunteers are younger, right? And so we try out different things and we test out different things, and we're out there knocking on the doors, and they're pretty receptive with the type of message that we're sending out. So I think as long as we continue our grassroots ways, and that usually comes with what the expenditures are, you know, because it does cost quite a bit to, you know, use that type of, and I can't really say guerrilla, but you know, ground level marketing, and I think that's usually the best way. Even with Omicron, you know, it's people are still welcoming us to their doorstep at least, you know, maybe not into their homes like they used to.
Yeah. In terms of District 26 itself, I mean, currently incumbent Jetton is serving. What do you think you can bring differently to its residents and all the people in the surrounding areas to really service them and better their lives as opposed to the way it is currently?
And just to correct you a little bit, I believe he pronounces his name Jeton.
Jeton?
I used to,
okay,
I used to say Jetton too.
Yeah.
And then I was corrected recently that it was actually pronounced Jeton.
Jeton, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, oh,
awesome.
okay. Yeah, so, you know, I always, my name, my last name has been mispronounced for, I don't know why.
Yeah.
They used to say lie, and I was like, why? There's no I on there. Yeah, and they were pronouncing it differently. So,
That's fair.
so long story short, what we can do to, I guess, make it better and how I can do a better job, I think is your question, is that, you know, we're going to spend a lot less time drawing people in and out of, you know, districts, right? So much time was spent on that. So much time. So much of our taxpayers' dollars was spent on that, right? And, you know, essentially, we kind of threw a lot of different things down by the wayside. But they passed a lot of laws. They passed a lot of laws. But a lot of those laws, you know, really took away the protections of the little guy, right? And so, you know, I've been a lawyer for the last 14 years. I know a lot of bad laws when I see them. I mean, not only do we review contracts, we litigate these contracts, we litigate, you know, different types of cases where I can see how there's gaps in our legislature and how they put things together. And unfortunately, you know, if we're not spending time on creating those laws to protect good people, and we're creating bad laws because we're not spending enough time on it, because that's, at the end of the day, it all boils down to how much focus you're putting in on something, right? No matter how big of a team you are, if you're not focused on something, you don't put enough time in there, you don't care, right? You don't care enough about it, right? So if you care more about redistricting, you care less about the teachers, or you care less about the environment, or you care less about, you know, things that really matter, like the power grid, but you're focused more on bathrooms, you know? The problem is that, you know, you're distracting everyone from what's important, you know, and people are upset, you know, they're upset by that. Other people are distracted, right? And so I'm just going to try to bring everybody back into focus. This area got affected by the freeze last year. This area, you know, my hometown, Katy, Texas, we all got affected by Harvey. And so, you know, we need to make sure that we just keep focusing on that, make sure we get the funding. I mean, I went to a meeting, like a MUD meeting a few months ago, and the whole place was jam-packed, and people were still suffering from it, you know, because they care, right? And even the local elected officials that were there, who were Republican, cared enough to show up and give the presentations, right? And so what I'm going to do is keep the focus on, let's try to get the funding back into, you know, the citizens so that we can get everything fixed, because last year that wasn't done, you know? So this year, this upcoming year, with your support, I can get in, and we're going to keep that focus on. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again.
I think one thing that's on a lot of Houstonians' minds right now is, and Texans as well, is a large influx in population. A lot of people are moving here, and that's obviously going to have effects on infrastructure, crime, education, traffic. What are some of your plans, or how do you think that's going to affect specifically District 26 and Houston as well?
Well, I mean, we welcome, I mean, Houston's a big melting pot. That's why the food here is so good, because we have such a nice mixture of everything, right? And so we welcome that. We're excited. One of the food capital, I would say one of the food capitals of the world.
Probably the.
The food capital of the world, probably. But along with that, every time there's an influx of people, there is a little bit of a negative side. More people, more crime, more people, more congestion as far as traffic is concerned. More people, more divorces, etc. Right? And essentially leading to some types of family violence. I mean, when you look at the news, you see a lot of crime on there, but if you look at per capita, it's really not that bad compared to some of the other cities, right? But because we're a big melting pot, there's a lot of conflict, right? And so, I mean, what we need to do is be a community, and community outreach is very important. Be an Asian American, I need to reach out to other communities. I went to the Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and that's a primarily African American university, right? It's one of the great historically black universities, in the United States. And so with that type of background that I have and that respect that I have from where I came from, I think we should be able to bridge some gaps. But everybody really needs to work together, because at the end of the day, we're not a divided States of America. We're a United States of America. And we just have to remember that and keep, like I said before, just focusing, right? If we can continue to focus on working together as a unit, because I know we're not, and we're letting outside forces, outside groups divide us, then we're just going to continue fighting, because we need our leaders to be on the same page.
With your years in law, you obviously probably understand some of these laws, and the way that you referenced earlier, some of the way that these companies maybe get around some of their obligations that they have. Your opponent, Mr. Allen, is a well-respected educator, but how do you think your experience in law kind of differs from his experience in education and kind of suits you better as a representative of Texas, preparing for those laws and as they come up?
Well, I definitely want to recognize that he has a lot of history in education, and so he's seen a lot on that end. I believe that, sometimes when you have career politicians, we need a different voice. We need a different perspective, right? It's not that experience is bad. It's just that sometimes there's better experience that is worth taking a shot and taking a look at, right? And so, being that I am in the legal field, and I do protect families for a living, I even represent children, what I bring is a results-based perspective, if that makes sense. Oftentimes, I have conversations with my transactional attorneys that send me cases, or we work together on stuff, and what they notice is that being from the litigation side, we kind of see the end result of everything, right? And so when someone enters into like a divorce, a prenuptial agreement, or they enter into some sort of real estate contract, right? Everything's all hypothetical, right? Just like when we have our representatives go to Austin, everything's based on some type of data, an expert testifying, and then they create what they think might be the best law, right? Or procedure available, right? Like, mask mandates and whatnot, right? But they don't know what the end result is, right? I do, because I'm at the end.
And how that's affecting communities.
Exactly. And not many people see that, right? And even if someone was to describe it to you, it'd be hearsay, you weren't there, right? You weren't there to see actually how it played out, right? So being that I've worked on, thousands of hearings, I kind of see how people suffer through that, right? And then how, okay, this is how we're going to fix it, right? And this is how we change those end results for these people, or at least make it so that it's more manageable, right? Whether it's, criminal, family, civil, all those things, right? I look at the end result, and then I want to make it better for everybody across the board. And that's why I think I could do a better job, a different job, right? Not saying he did a bad job, because, he didn't. we do the best we can. I think he did the best he can at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Is there any message you want to say to any of the voters or anyone that's ultimately going to decide who represents them?
Oh, definitely. If you want any more information about me, you can check me out. Please like, subscribe, smash that like button, as some of these young guys say. DanielLee4Texas.com. You can find me on Facebook as well. The HD26 area is basically Cinco Ranch, the Katy area, but the south of I-10 along 99, Pecan Grove, Richmond, and Rosenberg areas, which is mainly Fort Bend. So if you're in that area, you know someone in that area, tell them to come out, vote for me, say hi. I'm fairly nice most of the time. So come by, check out my platform, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on where to vote. Early voting is February 15th because yesterday was the first day, so it's today all the way to February 25th. March the 1st is election day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can go on to I think it was like voter411.org. But you should be able to find different voting locations, and they've opened that up for everybody. But I wanted to say, vote for me because I'm definitely going to do my best to make sure that these bad laws become good laws, and we should only have good laws for good people like you guys and everybody else in the state of Texas, because we don't deserve, secondhand and second-rate type laws that were not well thought out and focused. So we definitely deserve the best. So vote for me, and I'll at least, at minimum, hear you out, take everything into consideration, and fight for everything that you want that's best for you. Now, obviously, it has to be best for you. We're not having ice cream Fridays, all right? So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, Daniel. Early voting is from February 14th to 25th. The last day to apply for voting by mail is going to be February 18th, so make sure you get that in. Thank you so much. This has been Alec DeLeon here with Daniel Lee. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.